I know you love earning travel rewards and cash back, and that's why you're going to love Rakuten. With Rakuten, you can earn cash back on everything you need to book your dream trip, hotels, flights, rental cars, experiences, and more, while still booking through your favorite travel sites. And don't worry, cash back can be earned on top of earning the credit card points and the hotel and airline loyalty points that matter most to you, depending on how you make your booking. Plus, with Rakuten, you can also earn cash back on groceries and other purchases like electronics, pet supplies, and more. And the best part, you can join today for free and start earning cash back on top of your travel rewards. Go to Rakuten.com or get the app. That's Rakuten, Rakuten. Rakuten, the most rewarding way to shop.
It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number, 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number, save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.
We gather here tonight to bring women back to their rightful place.
The Testaments, a new Hulu original series from the executive producers of The Handmaid's Tale.
It's easier to accept a story than believe that the people around you are monsters.
The battle isn't over.
There comes a time when you have to take action, when you have to choose your own destiny.
Never quite as it seems.
Watch the new Hulu original series, The Testaments, streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus for bundle subscribers. Terms apply.
Places are now catering to remote workers and specifically digital nomads. Whereas when we started, digital nomads were finding them, going there, and then setting up shop. And so between visas, accommodations, and then I would call them amenities and infrastructure for digital nomads, it's completely different.
That is my good friend, Travis Sherry. He's today's guest. Travis also hosts a podcast called Extra Pack of Peanuts, and he's the organizer of Camp Indie, an adult summer camp for those seeking to live life on their own terms. You can learn more at campindy.com. Travis is a longtime location-independent entrepreneur since he and I both started working around the world over nearly 15 years ago now. We've witnessed some massive changes in how people approach location-independent living. And since it's been nearly 2 decades since Tim Ferriss coined the term lifestyle design in his groundbreaking book, The 4-Hour Workweek, we thought, has this concept evolved? Is there a need for a lifestyle design 2.0, perhaps a bit of an update to the term in today's world? And that's exactly what we're going to be exploring in this conversation. And of course, the nomad and remote work movement has changed quite a bit. It's gone from sort of a fringe movement to more mainstream. The technology has certainly transformed how we connect or even disconnect, and entire cities and towns are now catering to remote workers in ways we couldn't have imagined back then. In this conversation, we dive into how travel styles have evolved, why there are more options than ever for designing your ideal lifestyle, but also some new challenges, the emergence of the digital nomad infrastructure worldwide, whether the core principles of lifestyle design remain timeless despite all these changes, and loads more coming your way. If you're curious about how work and travel are changing, how it's evolving, this conversation, I hope, offers some valuable insights and ideas for designing or redesigning your lifestyle in 2025 and beyond. All of that, plus you're going to hear a short audio message from Bonnie, a listener of this show. She shares a travel tip I've never heard before. It's a bit of a hack for anyone looking to carry extra belongings onto a plane without getting charged those extra baggage fees. And she heard this tip the old-fashioned way, which I love. So you'll hear that and much more in today's show happening right now. So buckle up, strap in. Thanks for being here, and welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend.
You're listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams. And now your host, world wanderer and travel junkie, Jason Moore.
Hey, it's Jason here with ZeroToTravel.com. Welcome to the show, my friend. Thank you for being here. Thank you for letting me bring a little travel into your ears today. This is the show to help you travel the world on your terms. Of course, that idea, on your terms, at the heart of lifestyle design, putting an intention into the way you live your daily life. It's a big topic, and we thought since this term was coined way back in 2007 by Tim Ferriss, might be a good time to revisit it and hopefully give you some food for thought coming out of this conversation. Before we dive in, a quick reminder, we have a newsletter over at zerototravel.com/newsletter. It is free to sign up. You can get all the latest news there. And don't forget to stick around on the back end for that listener travel tip. I got this voicemail and I got really excited because I had not heard this tip before. So enjoy that, and I'll leave you with a quote as well. In the meantime, please enjoy my conversation with Travis Sherry. Thanks for listening, and I will see you on the other side, my friend. Cheers. Travis Sherry, welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend. Welcome back. How many podcasts have we recorded together? Probably like 300, maybe?
Do you have an answer? Because I'll put the over under at 300 is probably a pretty good over under number. If you put it there, I would go under, just because in my head I'm trying to figure out how many Location Indie podcasts did we do, how many times do you come on mine, or vice versa. I don't know. 300.
Yeah,
sounds
because
great.
we had a pretty long running podcast with Location Indie, which you're still running the event that I co-founded for the first one, and then you're just like, you could do this way better without me. So here we go. You're off and running, and you still got it going on. You didn't say that. I said that. Yeah, and that's coming up. So I wanted to just let people know it's an awesome event. It's called Camp Indie, INDIE. And if you go to campindie.com, you can learn about it. Basically, when we first did it, and we're going to have a different topic we're covering today, but when we first did it, we just wanted to bring together like sort of the unconventional lifestyle peeps, right? Like people that were just into that kind of vibe, whether they were living an unconventional lifestyle or not. Just bring together a bunch of cool people, create a cool vibe, and do it at a camp where people can play and have fun and do yoga and jump off crazy things and zip lines and swim in lakes and all that, instead of going to like a hotel conference. So anyway, if that sounds fun, Trav could tell you more about it. There are still tickets available, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, it's ultimately there's two types of people. You hear adult summer camp with a conference that you can learn how to lead an unconventional life, and you're like, whoa, yeah, that sounds great. I get to go to an adult summer camp, be a kid again, sign me up. Or you're like, no, not my jam. And I think when you and I first started it, that's what we wanted, right? It kind of self-selects, because we didn't want to be like, you can lead an unconventional lifestyle, get out of the 9-to-5, travel more, lead your most authentic life, and come to the Marriott in Orlando and we'll do it in a ballroom. We were like, that doesn't work.
No
so we
offense, Marriott Orlando.
No offense. I'll come and go to Disney World. But we looked at all these options and, trying to do it at music venues in Philly that you and I liked. And ultimately someone was like, what about an adult summer camp? And when we both heard it, the conversation was over. It was like, that's what we're doing. This is the kind of setting we need. So if it resonates with you, check it out. Campindie.com. Would love to have you. Jay is, he said that I could do it better without him. That is not the truth. The event really, though, speaks for itself. It doesn't have to do with me being the one running it. It really is just 150 to 200 awesome people getting together in an incredible setting, learning stuff, pushing their limits a bit, and having fun. And when you get into that setting with people, it doesn't matter who's running it. It's going to be an incredible experience. And the cool thing is, Jay, as you know, the ripple effects of that will last for years and years and years. Here we are 12, 13 years after we met at an event, recording a podcast together and still best of friends. So that shows you the ripple effect that these types of things have in your life. And that's why we started one, because we could not be more happy that we got to randomly meet at an event when we were locked out of a breakout room together and just started jamming on life. So
yeah, in-person events are kind of like an underestimated thing in some ways. I think in online business world, at least. I mean, I think people that go to them understand the value, but it's kind of like It's sneaky. It's like taking a walk during the day. You're just like, I don't think I'm getting anything done when I'm taking the walk, but I'm actually getting my best ideas. And, when you go to an in-person event, it's hard to quantify what will come out on the back end. And you don't want to quantify everything either, but some things will directly impact your business, your life, friendships, relationships, and so on. I brought up the podcast thing at first because if this sounds more like a conversation to everybody listening, that's why Travis and I recorded a lot of these together. And frankly, we thought it would be fun to make it a bit more of a conversation. And tying in with Camp Indie, I thought it would be really cool to talk about lifestyle design 2.0, if there is a 2.0. And I say that because this term was actually coined by Tim Ferriss in the 2007 release of the 4-Hour Workweek, which probably a lot of people are familiar with. A transformative book for me, I'm sure for you too, Trav. And, sometimes it takes somebody to put a wrapping on something and present it in a certain way for it to resonate and for it to start to click. And certainly this book did that for a lot of people, including me. You could say it was the genesis of the digital nomad movement in some ways, even though people were doing it. I was a nomad for 10 years prior to this book, but then I was starting to see the light of, I could do this in a different way, more on my terms. And I have this entrepreneurial itch, combining all these things. But lifestyle design doesn't have to be entrepreneurial. That's something we could talk about today. Anyway, all this to say is my thought on how to frame this up, Trav. And I know you brought 3 points. I have 3 points here. We don't know each other, so it's going to be fun as we reveal this. But in the end, I want to answer the question, does lifestyle design still mean the same thing? Like, does it even need an upgrade? But since the world has changed quite a lot since 2007, and we talk a lot about living the lifestyle you want to live, whether it's travel based or, having a home base and traveling, whatever it is. And this is the sort of the defining term in terms of like creating a life that you love, let's say. I thought it would be worth revisiting. And it ties in travel and everything else. And it certainly has for our own personal journey. So that's kind of the framing I thought we could go with around this discussion. What do you think? Does that sound about right?
Sounds perfect. I think 2007 in my head always doesn't seem like that long ago, right? This is how you know you're getting older, because you're like, 2007. Then you think, 18 years ago, 2007? Oh, okay. And yeah, I think it's a perfect framing because you hit the nail on the head when you said sometimes movements or thoughts need a wrapper put around them to then gain traction as a society, but also in your own head. As you mentioned, you had been doing this nomad thing for 10 years prior to Tim Ferriss coming out with a 4-Hour Workweek in 2007. Now, I had not been. So
not as a digital nomad, though. Not in the same way. Yeah.
Correct. But as soon as you start reading it, you think, whoa, this guy is encapsulating a lot of things that I'm hearing. It's like he's curating a bunch of information or a bunch of things that's happening into one nice package, which was his book, which was transformative to a lot of people. And all of a sudden, when you put a name to something, or at least like a book, and people can read it, it allows for those people who are feeling that way or wanting to live that lifestyle to say, okay, this explains it for me. Remember that, all these things that I've been saying like over the last 10 years, this explains what I'm trying to do or where I want to go, and someone can understand it. And that's why I think his book was so powerful. Not that the ideas were totally new, but that for people who were trying to live that lifestyle, now they had something they could share. And for people like me who, I was not leading a nomadic lifestyle. I was a teacher at that point, but all I knew in my head was that I'm not going to be a teacher for 30 years and I want to travel more. Those were like the two ideas. And I tell people that and they'd say, okay, well, what does that mean? What are you going to do? And I'd say, well, I have no idea. I just know these are the two things that I don't want to do this and I want to do this. I read the book and thought, well, every example in this book was essentially someone saying the same thing. Here's what I don't want to do, something super conventional, whatever it was. For me, it was teaching. Here's what I do want to do: travel more, have more freedom. At that phase of my life, it was just travel more because that's what freedom meant to me at that point, right? It was like just getting out of this concrete box that I'm teaching in and traveling more. And so I looked at it and thought everyone example he gives in this book is doing that. Okay, well, how did they do it? Derek Sivers started a CD company. You know, that's the one that I remember. There's a bunch of different examples in there. And even if I didn't know what I was going to do to break out of that box and lead this lifestyle, I got to see whatever 10, 15, 20, however many examples he gave and thought, okay, well, again, they figured it out. I'm not going to start a CD company, but I can figure something out. So, I mean, that's why I think it was so transformative to two different types of people. You were already living more of an unconventional lifestyle, but maybe had a hard time quantifying that to other people, kind of what it was like. I was trying to and had a hard time quantifying it to people because I couldn't even quantify it to myself.
Yeah. But even me then, I was making a transition. I was trying to figure out how I could have more freedom because I was still sort of tied to the work I was doing and the career I was in, which was involving touring and traveling. But I was still sort of the same boat. Like I still needed to figure out something that could free me up in that way. And I think that I want to get into your first point here, but I think that one other thing that this did was, you know, it sounds so obvious. It's like, well, you could intentionally design your life. Of course, duh. But sometimes it takes, especially when you're younger, it takes somebody to like light that up for you to see it. And then the lifestyle design, like the actual term using lifestyle instead of life design, I think was really powerful because it felt more manageable in some ways. You know, you could imagine that you could intentionally design your lifestyle like an artist, and you know, inherently that would lead to a more enjoyable daily life, which of course leads to the ultimate thing of kind of like I don't want to say living your best life because I never know how to put this into terms because it's like you don't want to set the expectation that every day is going to be perfect. You know, it's not just the way life works. But
do you think best? I don't feel like best means perfect. To me, it just means you're making the decisions. Like that's I think what has always resonated with me when I think about leading my best life. I'm making those decisions. Now, it doesn't mean every decision I make turns out perfect or is like, whoa, yeah, Trav, like this is incredible. Sometimes it's a really good decision. Sometimes it's one that I pivot from. But ultimately, to me, it's about who's steering the ship, who's in control. If it's me, that to me then leads to my best life because I get to make the call in the moment with how I feel and my thoughts versus someone telling me what to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that everybody has to manage it from a mindset perspective, however they need to. But I liked the concept of designing a lifestyle, knowing that overall, when it all said and done, if I am intentionally designing a lifestyle that I enjoy, then I'm going to be enjoying the vibe of most days, let's say.
Well, one thing that sticks out to me in that book, and again, I haven't read it since 2007. I was tempted when we came up with this topic to go and like flash read it in, you know, the 3 days where we're like, here's what we're going to talk about. I didn't, but one of the reasons I didn't is I wanted to say, well, what is still sticking in your head, right? 18 years later, what are the few things you remember? One thing that I remember from that book, and I'll tell you why I think I remember it now with hindsight, is his idea of talking about mini retirements. And that was, okay, instead of just like going up this ladder, rung by rung by rung, and then when you reach the top, you get like the break, right? That was just ingrained in me. I was a teacher. Like there was
suburban Philadelphia. You know, that's what you do.
Suburban Philadelphia. Like for me, it was teaching, but in every job, I didn't know anyone who ever took a break. It was just like, well, I'm just working my way up the corporate ladder, or working my way up the teaching ladder, or, you know, my dad owned his own company. So he was just working he did work his way up through that company and then became the owner. So it was just like working your way up. And then the break happened at 65, right? If you were lucky, 55, maybe. And that was really common then. And, you know, still very common now. One of the big shifts, I think, is when he talked about mini retirement. I remember reading that and thinking, yeah, life doesn't, you don't have to pick a path and stay on it forever. Until then, he would do things, and then, every couple of years he'd take a retirement and maybe start another company or whatever. And at that point, what that did to me was allow me to realize that my decisions were not permanent. And that was a huge weight off my shoulders of like, whoa, okay, like you can make a decision and change your life and go try something. You can, the word that comes to mind now, like you can experiment with something and then maybe experiment with something else. That was maybe the biggest mindset shift of the whole book was, you're not locked into something like all these other people who are leading these conventional lives. Go try something, see if it works. If it does, great. If it doesn't, you've probably figured something out that's pushing you down a path that you didn't know existed if you stayed on the conventional path. And that was a whoa, aha, oh my gosh. If this quote unquote fails, well, I can go back to teaching. And I guess, as you said, in hindsight, you're like, well, of course you could, Trav. Why didn't you think that on your own? It was because I didn't have anyone in my life who was doing that. So why would I think that was possible until someone came along with a book and a momentum and a movement to show me that others were doing that, because I didn't grow up in that mindset.
We'll get back to the interview in just a moment. I know you love earning travel rewards and cash back, and that's why you're going to love Rakuten. With Rakuten, you can earn cash back on everything you need to book your dream trip, hotels, flights, rental cars, experiences, and more, while still booking through your favorite travel sites. And don't worry, cash back can be earned on top of earning the credit card points and the hotel and airline loyalty points that matter most to you, depending on how you make your booking. Plus, with Rakuten, you can also earn cash back on groceries and other purchases like electronics, pet supplies, and more. And the best part, you can join today for free and start earning cash back on top of your travel rewards. Go to Rakuten.com or get the app. That's Rakuten, Rakuten. Rakuten, the most rewarding way to shop. Now, back to the show. This is going to be interesting where we end up here as we get into it, because I can already feel that this term in the modern age, let's call it like the 2000s, when the internet age feels timeless to the internet age in some ways right now. Like, does it actually need an upgrade? I don't know, because a lot of the concepts feel a bit timeless right now in terms of, you could say, I don't want to say timeless. I'm using air quotes on that because it just came out in 2007. I'm referring to this little tiny chunk of time in the scope of humanity. But I don't think people, in the Industrial Revolution in the 1900s were thinking about this kind of thing unless you were, part of the 0.0001%. It just wasn't that way. But now there's more opportunity than ever, I think. The internet, in some ways, we all know bad, good, and all that, but it's leveled the playing field in terms of the tools that are available and how quickly you can get things up and running. And, you don't need a physical shop and all these things. Let's get into the bullet points, because I think I'm sure the conversation will meander from there. But what do you have first? What's your first kind of thought on this?
Yeah, I think, not to bury the lead, I think that it does need an upgrade, but in the way that books come out and have second and third and fourth editions, that's how it needs the upgrade. Meaning the meat of it is still completely relevant and groundbreaking, and yet there's a lot that has changed that allows things to be done differently. And my first point on what's different is that I don't believe now that being a digital nomad and this lifestyle design and leaning into lifestyle design is the new frontier anymore. I think that it has become commonplace enough that it's not something that is so groundbreaking and is so cutting edge that if you go and talk to someone, off the street, that they wouldn't understand it. Maybe not everyone understands it, but I think there's been a much more of a mass adoption in the last 18 years that leading this unconventional lifestyle in this way, specifically as like a digital nomad or remote worker who doesn't live in the same place all the time, can bounce around if they want, works online, has the freedom, mostly I would say the location freedom, right? I think has been the biggest shift. There's a lot more people with more location freedom than there was 18 years ago. I think that has entered the world in a way that, again, I hesitate to say that the majority of people understand it, but a much bigger percentage of people understand it, that it doesn't feel like the new frontier. I will caveat that by saying perception is also our reality. Our perception is our reality. So it felt like the new frontier to me because I wasn't doing it then, right? So in 2007, well, I wasn't doing it. I didn't know anyone who was doing it. So when I read that book, I thought, all of this is new. This is blowing my mind.
Well, I think that's why it was popular, because everybody felt the same way,
Yeah, right. And I think you're right there. And so then it gained some traction, but also me as a person starts doing this stuff, starts going to in-person events, meets people like you. We're at the World Domination Summit. There's 1,000 people all there around the tagline, how to lead an unconventional life in a conventional world. So if you're going to meet the people who are doing it, you go to an event like that that's geared that way, and you meet them. And all of a sudden, I now have an ecosystem of 50 friends that are doing it, whereas before I had 0. So I'm looking for a Honda Element, as this is a shout out to Jay, as our second car. We need a second car. I'm looking for a Honda Element. Well, now I see Honda Elements driving all over the street because a Honda Element is on my mind. So I understand that my perception is my reality. And also I think because of Tim's book, The 4-Hour Workweek, and just where the world went, that my reality is also based in the real world reality, that this is not the new frontier. There's a ton more information about how to live this lifestyle now. There's a lot more places that you can go that are quote unquote discovered. There's a lot more infrastructure. There's a lot more people doing it. And so I think that getting into this lifestyle now is a lot easier and a lot more of a known quantity.
Yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned getting into this lifestyle, but I just want to zoom out for a second and remind you that the lifestyle, not you, but everybody listening and myself, that lifestyle design, what I like about the term is it's applicable in your own individualistic way, right? So like for some people that might mean the lifestyle of traveling around and stuff. For others, it might mean, something completely different. But either way, it involves some mix of time, location, and financial freedom, perhaps. And if that financial freedom might mean different things to different people, it doesn't necessarily have to mean, you have enough money to retire type of thing, which, well, we can get into that. But I agree that this is the main point. It went from frontier to commonplace, or you want to say more, at least towards the status quo. And I think obviously we all know COVID accelerated that. Like we've been doing Zoom calls for, I don't know how long, years and years and years. And then people are like, what's this Zoom thing? It's like people had never worked remotely before, and then they were forced to work remotely. And then they're like, oh, this is kind of cool. I don't have to like sit in traffic for an hour. I can just do my job here. And I have, that was, I don't want to say it was like a better lifestyle in the sense that, we were under a pandemic, but just that idea that they could like take a break and go for a walk or whatever in the middle of the day, and starting to get the idea of what that freedom felt like. That obviously accelerated it and then became normalized in companies to like work remotely, and all of that plays in for sure. I totally agree, man. It has become more mainstream, let's say, the idea.
Do you think that's a good or bad thing, or neither? Just that this idea, remote work, and then as a broader topic, that lifestyle design, as you mentioned, this idea that people are saying, wait, I can design my lifestyle more, which essentially means to me, lifestyle design means I'm making more decisions than are being made for me. Like every day I'm making more of my own decisions for someone else. Do you feel like that is, like a positive development?
I think what's positive for anybody is if they can figure out a way to, live in like a healthier, more balanced way for them if they don't feel like they're in balance right now, and that there are options to be able to do that, and that it's a doable thing. I think that's important for society. Yeah, I think that, living in Norway here, that's one thing I noticed about society is that, people work, but they don't I don't see many people put work above family, for example, or like if you're in the office I don't work in an office here, but I hear these stories. If it's like, around the holidays or like coming up to a holiday and you're in the office for some reason, it's like frowned upon. It's not like, oh, that guy's a real go-getter, It's more like, ew, like, what are you doing? Get out of here. Have a life, And that's not the reality in a lot of places, particularly growing up in the States. I know it's it's a lot of hustle, you got to make a lot of things happen for yourself. There's not the social safety net. This is a whole other topic, but yeah. So I do think that having access to living a more healthy, balanced life is a good thing, of course. One point I wanted to bring up in the upgrade, this is my first bullet point, I guess, is from the travel perspective. Let's say if people are using the lifestyle design concept to get location freedom so they can travel more, right? Which is probably a fair bit of this audience, and was certainly my motivation in the beginning and yours as well. We wanted the location freedom so we could go and travel on our terms. That's like the thing that kicked it off for both of us, and I'm sure a lot of people listening, whether you're aspiring to it or doing it. And I think that people have realized that involves slow travel.
Ding, ding, ding. We've got the same point
crossover
here.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. That's okay. We don't have to hit all three if we cross over. Like we said, we didn't know what each other we were going to talk about here, but I think the hedonic treadmill concept, like the sort of chasing one pleasure after the next, is there's perhaps a time and place for that in your travel life, and like I've certainly been that sort of jumping around and kind of going. But the reality of trying to, if you are somebody who's like earning a living while you're traveling, whether you're working for a company or yourself, it's not sustainable to kind of do it in that way. You have to slow down. And that means people are basing in particular places longer. And, that has its own set of, pros and cons for the individual and also for the community. But I do think that people now, I think in Tim's book, it was like some of the vibe was like, hacking, like let's use geo arbitrage to like, live cheaper. And like, it wasn't necessarily super sensitive to how it would impact the local communities. I haven't read it in a long time either. So maybe he did talk about some of that stuff, and I'm not throwing Tim Ferriss under the bus, believe me. But I just think as a whole, this movement has gotten more sensitive to some topics like that. I think so. As people have slowed down, as they've realized that, hey, all of us coming in and living in this place, this has like an impact. What does that mean? Is there a way that we can balance this better? The communities are trying to figure it out. The travelers perhaps are trying to figure it out to an extent, and everybody's more conscious of that. So I think that the necessitation of slow travel has changed a lot of the sort of landscape of lifestyle design, I guess.
Yeah, I would say that the point that I had in my notes was that slower travel still wins out. Like that's one of the things that is the same. And I don't think will change that. If you are trying to build this sustainable lifestyle design, and that's around travel, and as you mentioned, especially if you're working, and especially if you're working and have kids or even a partner who's working, where when you get to a place, it's going to take time to integrate into that place and really just find your footing. That slow travel still wins out and still is, you use the word hack. It's like still the number one hack or the number one suggestion I would give anyone who says, yeah, I'm going to go and do this. Like I used to live in this place, but I'm going to go off for a long extended period of time or an indefinite period of time. I'm thinking of our friend Caitlin, right? Specifically in the last year and a half, where she said, I'm taking myself on the road. I'm going indefinitely. I'm going to be traveling. I'm going to be a full-time digital nomad. The number one tip I gave her, or I would give anyone, is slow it down more than you think. And this is harder to do than it is to say but it's learned through experience. When I started out, we were bumping around a lot, and that was great for the travel side, really bad for the business side. And, we were basically nomadic for a 2-year stretch, like fully nomadic. And I would say a third of the way in, maybe a half of the way in, we realized we have to slow down our travel some, or this is just, we're not doing either a good service, right? The travel doesn't seem that fun because we don't feel like we're getting to explore enough. And the business is suffering because, oh my gosh, I'm sitting here in Bali and I don't want to write this blog post, but I'm typing it up, but I haven't even got to explore those rice fields over there. And you constantly feel like there's this tension. That tension doesn't totally go away, but it certainly lessens a lot when you slow travel because you have more time to do both of those things. So I think that is not something that I ever see changing, because it's just something that makes it more sustainable, easy, and less pressure on you to have to try to cram it all in.
Yeah, it's interesting the way you pointed that out, like the example of writing and trying to get pulled and trying to figure out the push pull of like not serving the travel part and not serving the business part. That's can be a tricky balance. That's cool that we crossed over on slow travel. I like that.
Great minds think alike.
Can I go to my
go to your next point
here? Well, I've been thinking about this a lot, given my new project and things like that. And I think that in the beginning of the lifestyle design, and you could say the beginning of the digital nomad movement, location independence, and all of this stuff, which again, we were getting into this in like 2010, 2012. Maybe it doesn't feel as fresh now, which is why we're having this conversation, because it's like, should this be freshened up? And I think this is an example of a change that has taken place. We mentioned a change of travel, going down to more slow, more based in one location. I think that the mindset in the beginning was like, wow, we have like 24/7 connectivity. This is a revolution. This is like empowering the whole movement to happen. We have the internet. We can connect anywhere. We can connect anytime. This is awesome. And I remember being in Brazil, actually on the trip when I met my wife for the first time in 2008. And I was there with my buddy, and he works for like a major financial company, let's just say a major consulting firm. And I remember him, we were sharing a hostel, like private room. And I remember him being on his BlackBerry a lot. And even though I had read Tim Ferriss's book and it was so weird to me, Trav. Like I didn't understand what he was doing. Like it did not compute at all. I'm like, why? I don't understand. Like, why are you doing anything right now? Like this is, and granted, we were just on like a couple week trip on that trip for the Brazil. So I was justified, but I was just like, why, what, like, I just didn't understand it. It didn't make any sense. Like, why would you be working at all? We're traveling. We're going to rent a bike today and like ride to some town 20 kilometers away. And we don't know what's going to happen. This is it's like the travel experience. This is what we're doing. We're going out on adventures, like we don't know what's going to happen. Why are you sitting and staring at the screen? Little did I know that would become my life and the life of many others. And I remember, because it was like an inflection point in a way, right? It was like the end of my innocence after that trip in some ways, right? Like that was like such a foreign, weird thing that became like a totally normal thing. And I think that did power the movement. But now I think people realize it's also the thing that's slowly killing your soul. And there's this need to go back to the idea of like, hey, we're doing this so we don't have to be connected all the time. Like we don't want to be connected all the time. And I remember being on these tours when I was nomadic and doing these jobs, and we had a computer that the company would give us, and we'd have to do these reports. And I remember, like, for years and years and years, anytime I had to open up the computer, it was like such a drag. I was like, oh, I got to do these freaking reports. And I would just go as quickly as I could, as fast as possible, so I could just get off the computer as quickly as possible. That was like the mission. And it just became completely the opposite later. And in some ways, I felt it was very challenging, and I developed that habit, and then I lost my way. And now I feel like I'm trying to get back, and I feel like a lot of other people are as well. So I just wanted to highlight that. We'll get back to the interview in just a moment. Now, back to the show.
Yeah, now you're laying in bed on vacation on the computer in your hand, and it's like a completely different experience. I will agree that that has changed the experience maybe more than any other facet of all of this, is the ability to be connected. I don't want to paint it as positive or negative, and yet I will, because I do think it sucks away some of the enjoyment and mystery of it if you're connected too much. To your point, I can remember 2 specific times of getting connected when I was first starting out on this digital nomad thing, and it felt awesome.
I remember it being a thrill too, when you could like, oh
Yeah.
my God, I just made a business deal from Cambodia. You know, this is crazy.
We were in Thailand and it was Christmas, and I was able to walk. We were in Koh Lanta, or Koh Phi Phi, actually, and I was able to walk down to an internet cafe, Heather and I, and we were able to Skype my family. And I still have the picture of like us taking a picture of the picture of the screen, right? And there we are. Hair is like, it's so humid, so our hair is all fluffy. You know, we're in this tiny little internet cafe there at home, and we're Skyping them. I remember thinking, wow, this technology is incredible that I can be on the other side of the world and still say hi to them. And it was mind-blowing. And another time when I was in the mountain hostel, which you know very well, in Gimmelwald in Switzerland, there was one computer sitting there in the lobby, and you could get on. You know, you signed in for a certain time, you could get on, you could check email, but most people weren't even checking email, because what did you have to check? Like, most people weren't using email near as prevalently. But it was mostly like, I got to go book a flight or a train ticket, and you'd get on and everyone would be around the computer, you know, because it's right there in the lobby. And so, you know, I'd be sitting having a pastry, and someone would be like, oh, you'd be like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm booking a flight to here. Oh man, what's it cost? Maybe I should go there. And it was almost a communal event. It was a communal event. And there was so much novelty and enjoyment. And as you mentioned, just like, appreciation of it. And now, of course, we all have our phones. We're always connected. We all have our own individual computers. And I feel like there is a lot of mystery that if you're constantly connected, that you're missing out on. And we now have to act as hard as we had to actively fight to try to be connected then. We equally have to fight to try not to be connected now. And that is just a massive, massive shift. And I think with the box that you're making, and with, I think, even younger generations than us, Jay, you see a lot of this really wisdom from them to fight back against always being connected, because they've always had it. So I think for them, it's, oh my gosh, it's easier for them to see the shadow side of it than us, or at least it's easier for them to fight against the shadow side of it than we are, because it's still kind of really amazing to us who grew up without it that we have it. And for our parents, even more so. My gosh, I see them on their phones and stuff more than me, because it's just like, they couldn't have never imagined that they would have all this power in their pocket. And so I do think that is a massive thing that changed, a massive difference. And to your point, something that needs to be thought out and thought of when we're looking at what lifestyle design 2.0 looks like. Because now I think you have to consciously say, I want to design my life so that I'm not as connected. And that we never would have imagined that 18 years ago.
Yeah. You mentioned the box. Yes, I am making a solution to help people with their cell phone habits. I haven't really announced it yet, but I will be. Yeah, you will see something soon. And if you just go to zerototravel.com/newsletter, and you'll get the announcement for that if you want some help.
Oh man, I didn't mean.
No, it's okay, man. It's the hot take.
Podcast.
You know, I'm still working out, but
I figured
it's very close to launching. No, it's okay. But it's exciting, and I'm really excited about it. And I think this, not to plug my own thing here, but I do want to encourage people, like anybody that feels like they're struggling with the smartphone habits. I have a solution that I think is working really well, at least for the beta tests. And, it's there's no magic bullet for this, but you need some tools to work with. And if that sounds like that would help you, then yeah, just sign up for the newsletter and you'll hear about it. It's one of those things that, like with anything else, you could say, man, the blessing and the curse, right? Just depends on how you use it. I will say one last thing with it. I don't remember where I read this, but there was a comparison to like the lunch pail worker, let's call them, right? Like they would show up, they're a mechanic or something, they have their tools, and when they go home, like they leave their tools there and then they're home and they relax. But when your tools are in your brain, or your tool is your laptop, which is sitting in front of you, or your smartphone, which is in your pocket, it's not as easy to shut it off and make that distinction. And that can be a bit of a learning process for people getting into this. And it certainly was for me when I started working location independently in 2012. It was bizarre to go from like one world to another. Anyway, by the way, you mentioned Skype. If Chris, our editor, wants to play a little funeral music right now, Skype is retiring in May 2025 at the time of this publication. So Skype is now sitting on a plane somewhere, heading off to the jungles of Southeast Asia, or who knows, maybe it's a small retirement community in Panama. Yeah, you can hear the sounds now as it's enjoying the beach. No, that was the old internet dial-up thing. I can't remember the sound.
It's actually that actually makes me feel a little sad. Granted, I have not used Skype or booted my Skype up in maybe 5 years. I assume I'm still probably paying whatever that was that I've been paying. It's like on a monthly recurring or yearly recurring. Obviously not enough because it's gone.
Time to cancel that subscription, Trav.
Hopefully
Skype is sunsetting.
I did not know that, and that is a bit shocking actually to me in a weird way. I mean, here we are having not used Skype in a while, but it is crazy when a technology that was so ubiquitous and so transformative has been surpassed by 1,000 different other options at this point. I guess that's what happens. Like when you get older, things that are institutions, right, end up getting surpassed or changing into something completely different. So
yeah, you mentioned Caitlin before too. I do have to give her a shout out because she's the associate producer of this show. So just giving Caitlin some love. I'm sure she's listening to this right now. Okay,
Caitlin down building cob houses in Costa Rica as she's.
I know.
Talk about leading lifestyle design. She wanted to learn how to build cob houses, and they had a workshop in Costa Rica, and she's down there doing that while working. So, I mean, that would not have been an option had she still been in her job at a hotel in Richmond, Virginia. So, I mean, that's obviously the super positive side is you can have these types of experiences. Her and I were in Zanzibar together. She was working from probably one of the world's best beach bars, looking at the bluest ocean and the whitest sand. And I was like, I'm not working right now. I'm going for a swim. And then she'd come and join me. And I mean, there's so many positives to this, to being able to design your own life. And as you mentioned, disconnecting is just one of the things that, that just has to be top of mind because the pendulum has swung so far the other way. One of kind of piggybacking on that, a point that I had here that's a really massive change is that places are now catering to remote workers and specifically digital nomads. Whereas when we started in 2007, 2008, 2009, we started thinking about it. And, I became quote unquote a digital nomad, I guess, 2012 when I left Japan. I had a teaching job there. And then August 2012 was the last time I had a job that I needed to be in a location for, right? And so August 2012, I guess, was when I started becoming a digital nomad. And at that point, there were digital nomad hotspots for sure. Okay, hey, digital nomads are congregating in this area. A lot of it was around, as you mentioned, places where you could get a quality of life for quite a bit less, like a really high quality of life for quite a bit less than you might spend in your home country. A lot of digital nomads were Australians, from the US, from Western Europe. So that meant A lot of people were going to Southeast Asia. Chiang Mai was a hot spot then, still is. But so there are pockets of digital nomads in certain places, but those areas were not catering to them. Digital nomads were finding them, going there, and then setting up shop. And I remember specifically, we were in Bali in 2013 in Ubud. And I mean, we were there for a month at least. I did not meet a single other digital nomad. Now, I met travelers and Australians who were like on a 2-year vacation, a travel journey, but I did not meet a single other digital nomad, which is crazy because I have not been back for a while, but our friend Benny from Fluent in 3 Months was just there, and an area called Canggu in Bali. At that point, the only guy I knew who was a digital nomad who worked there was a guy who started travelfish.org, which is an awesome website for Southeast Asia. If you want to know anything about Southeast Asia, go read Stuart and his team's info. It's the world's best resource on Southeast Asia. But I had been reading his stuff. I went and met him, and he was living there. So I guess he was a digital nomad, but he was living there with his family. And there was nothing in Canggu. We met at some crazy little restaurant in the rice fields, no one around. And Benny just said to me, he was there last month. He said, I could have picked 10 to 15 different gyms that were essentially catering to like digital nomads and people who are living here, who are Westerners working here. And they were all expensive. They were more expensive than gyms you'd have in the States, yada, yada, yada. So, that place has completely changed. And the point that I'm making here is that these areas, both from a top-down level, meaning the government saying we're going to have digital nomad visas, we're going to work to be able to allow you to stay here longer than 3 months through these visas. And then it filters down to the people living there now catering to them. There's coffee shops and gyms and things that are basically built not for the local population, but built for this subset of people, digital nomads who are coming and either traveling through for a month or two at a time or setting up shop and living there longer term. There's way more accommodation options. And so between visas, accommodations, and then I would call them amenities and infrastructure for digital nomads, it's completely different because they're catering to them versus the digital nomad coming and figuring it out. And again, I see this as both there are positive sides and negative sides to it, Jay. The positive is that if you're a digital nomad, well, it's going to be a lot easier for you, and there's going to be a lot more people there and a lot more creature comforts that you would want to have at home, and that's not a bad thing. The more negative side is that you can now lead a much more insulated lifestyle amongst the local population unless you make an effort, just like we talked about with being disconnected from the internet, unless you make an effort to kind of disconnect out of those digital nomad bubbles that have popped up.
Yeah, I love it. I'm glad you brought this up because this is something I was going to actually close this out with, this idea, but you articulated it much better than I could. Basically, massive systemic change, right? You're talking about infrastructure, like you said, visas. You can say co-living, an example of like a whole industry that's popped up, a co-living space as opposed to a hostel or a hotel place that, caters to somebody that needs a good Wi-Fi connection that's working, connecting with other people that are working on the road, things like that. I mean, on and on and on. And that's been a huge change. And to your point, I think that is where the design part of lifestyle design comes in, right? Like you could end up or intentionally go to these hubs, let's use Chiang Mai as an example, and you could just be with other travelers all the time. But this has always been the case with travel, right? Like you could go to a hostel and you could just be with other travelers all the time and, stay in that bubble of like, here's where the backpackers go. Here's where everybody hangs out. And yes, you're in the place, but you're with travelers all the time. And you have to make the effort to break out of the bubble. So, and maybe in that way, things haven't changed as much. It's just a different type of bubble.
Yeah. And I think travelers are just spending inherently less time in those areas. So if you're traveling, you might be there 3 or 4 days. So you come into the hostel, you spend 3 or 4 days
yes,
with that bubble.
You're not living there for 3 months. Yeah.
And then but when you're living there or you're there for 3 months or a year, you're in the bubble longer, right? You're just spending more time in the bubble than a traveler would, I would
But
say.
it's understandable too, because you also have, again, this isn't poo-pooing anybody in the bubble. I can understand, I can imagine, like you mentioned, we met at an event, how thrilled you were to get around like all these other people doing, trying to do these crazy unconventional things at the time. And that's what you do. If you go to a bubble and you're trying to build something and you got like all these other people building stuff around you and they get like that, and then the balance and the goods, the bads, all the stuff, and you're doing it together and you're like part of this community. The community thing is huge and something that didn't really exist like in the same way when we started. And so that can be it's a huge change, and it's a great foundation for people that want to get into this, because it's not really, you can show up to a place and have all these people kind of like maybe not doing the same exact business or working for the same exact company as you, but kind of living the same lifestyle. And so you're having that support that's built in. But when it comes to the design part, it's also perhaps, if it's important to you to also connect with the place in a different way and get out of those bubbles, then you just have to be intentional about it. That's all.
I mean, I wish that we had this when you and I were first starting. I mean, that would be incredible.
That's why we created it, because
Right.
the event and everything, because like we didn't know where everybody was, like.
Yeah, I mean, that's why ultimately, again, not trying to paint everything as positive or negative, but if I look at this development, that there's just more catering to digital nomads, both from a visa perspective, a top-down perspective, I see this much more as a positive than a negative. And the reason is, one, I wish I had it when I started, because you're going to be able to build your tribe and your group much quicker, and you're going to be able to do it in a lot more places. Back then, it was, you could go to Chiang Mai. There was, one or two other places where you could go and maybe have enough people that, you could build out a tribe. And even when I was in Chiang Mai, when I started in 2012, I mean, there was only a handful of us. Of course, there's people I didn't meet, but when I'm talking about the people I met over a month period, we're not talking hundreds of digital nomads. We're talking 10 to 20. And, we weren't all in the same place. There wasn't co-living facilities. It wasn't, there wasn't group dinners happening every night. People would put some few things together and you'd meet people, but it was much more piecemeal. And so now you can go to way more places and have this as an option. So let's say you didn't want to go to Thailand, or Thailand's too far away, or the time zones don't work. Well, now you can go to Medellin, Colombia. You can go to Playa del Carmen. You could go to places in Costa Rica. You can go to places that, if you're in the US, make more sense as a time zone. And you maybe if that's a limiting factor for you, you have more options, which is awesome. I would say that, you have more options to slow travel now, because co-living stuff builds an infrastructure for you to come and say, I'm going to be here for a month, 2 months, 3 months, and not have to figure everything out. The visas are super helpful. If you want to come and stay in a place, now you can. Before, you were limited to whatever the traditional visa was for that, because no one understood who digital nomads were. So I definitely think it's more of a positive. And I will also say that if you want to get off the beaten path, if you go to those places, as you mentioned, and you want to get off the beaten path, well, then you can still do that, right? Go outside of the main hub, outside of the main bubble, and get off the beaten path, or go somewhere different that is like, isn't a digital nomad bubble.
That was
example,
Canggu in circa 2012 or whatever. Yeah, there's plenty of places.
Go to Myanmar. Go to Myanmar. I guarantee you go to Myanmar, you're not going to be surrounded by digital nomads. I wasn't surrounded by digital nomads there in 2014. You're not going to be surrounded by digital nomads there in 2025. So you still be a digital nomad.
There's a conflict there now, so maybe that's not the place to go. But,
yeah.
But I know, to your point.
But, I think that sometimes we have these romantic visions of, I use the word, this is not a new frontier. And we think, oh, that's, that kind of inherently in my head paints as like not as cool. Oh, it's not a new frontier, so you missed the boat. No, there are plenty of places that will be a frontier worthy, new frontier worthy, if you go to them and be a digital nomad. There's just more stuff in the places that are the hubs, and there's more hubs. So in essence, why I think it's much more of a positive thing is, again, it comes down to choice. You have more choices. If you want to get off the beaten path, go to a bunch of these other places. If you want to be on the path and build your community and tribe, as you mentioned, Jay, well, then start in a Medellin, start in a Chiang Mai, start in a Canggu, in Bali, right? I mean, the list goes on, and then go from there. I just think, man, if we had this when I started, it would have made it easier, and I think I would have met more people. And the idea of co-living, I don't want to belabor this too much, but that is an awesome idea. And I remember someone asked me 10 years ago, or no, like 8 years ago, he said, digital nomads are kind of becoming more mainstream. At that point, it was, right? Tim Ferriss's book had come out. He goes, what do you see as the next biggest difference happening in the next 5 years? Kind of how digital nomad stuff blew up in that 5-year span. And I'm going to pat myself on the back here, but I said, I think just living arrangements. I think there's going to be more options for like co-living and like these pods of digital nomads, with more facilities for them. And we've seen that happen. And I think it's just wasn't that I'm some super smart person. It's just a natural progression.
Yeah. I have one more point I just wanted to bring up, but I would say, to summarize that, just because it's fresh, I think that lifestyle design, well, what would you say? Does it need an upgrade? Are we saying that it needs an upgrade, or that just to me, after coming out of this conversation, I feel like it doesn't necessarily need a huge upgrade in terms of like the definition of it. But I think that what we can see is now we have more tools at our disposal to make it happen in the way that, in a way, it could be easier than ever to practice the art of lifestyle design, if you want to call it that, because you have more to work with in terms of like some of the stuff we laid out: infrastructure, community, the connectivity, and all that stuff.
Yeah, I agree. The core tenet, the core definition of it, the core goal of lifestyle design, I think is still exactly the same. To me, and everyone's definition is different, what it boils down to is I'm the one designing my own lifestyle as much as possible. There are going to be factors out of my control, but you and I came up with it when we had Location Indie as the triangle of freedom: time, financial, and location freedom, which again took us years to come up with a simple concept. But I think if you still follow that and you say the idea of lifestyle design is getting closer to realizing all three of those points of the triangle. I have my location freedom, I have my time freedom, I have my financial freedom. To me, that's still the core goal of lifestyle design, is continuing to push towards those three freedoms where you have control over that, because then you get to make the decisions. I think that is still was the definition in back then, even if you and I didn't have the idea of the triangle in our head, but that's what we were going after. And to your point, I think that it's just more accessible and we have more tools. So the definition and the core goal for me, and I think for other people, isn't changed. The way we get there has changed. And again, as I would say, I think it's changed in a positive way because it allows more people the option to do this. It's becoming more and more accessible. And I think more people are doing it. And therefore, more people feel like they can do it because they're seeing these examples of people like you and I doing it, who in 2007 weren't doing it. Cool. And that's how a movement happens and momentum happens.
And I do think, going back to what we said earlier, is the doing it in a conscious way also, I think is going to be important for the whole ecosystem. Doing it in like making the considerations in terms of like how travelers might impact the local economy in these hubs, for example, or, all of those considerations I think are important. I'm going to bring it back before we part ways to the OG, because we started with Tim Ferriss, who coined this term in 2007. And one thing that I don't think has changed, despite any technology and all of that stuff, a ton of it's changed, of course, and how you use it, but core business principles and core like relationships, sales skills, these things, like if you're running your own thing, or like if you have to sell yourself working remotely to a company, trying to figure out different ways you can stand out so you get hired, all of these things. I feel like there are different tools at your disposal to perhaps do that. but those core principles are still there, I think. And Tim has a great post on his tim.blog, and it's /lifestyle-costing. And he goes into the idea of ideal lifestyle costing. It's less than you think. And he talks about the financial part and how you can come to a TMI, which is like a target monthly income, and a TDI, a target daily income, based on your goals. So he says, like, what is your ideal lifestyle in exact detail, and how much does it cost per month? So like breaking it down, he has like this expense calculator and all this stuff. Like a framework like this, and we'll link to it, is that still works. It's still like he's reverse engineering like what you need to live that lifestyle. And I think it's a good place to start, because when it comes down to it, it's going to be a money question, right? Like, what kind of lifestyle do I want to live? How can I get that lifestyle? How can I make it achievable? Well, let's break this down financially and figure this out. And that's what this post helps you do. So I think that that was worth kind of mentioning, just because there are some core tenets that stand. And you never know what the end game is going to be, but you can think about that if you're starting something new. Just as a last point I wanted to make, it's like, nothing lasts forever in a way. Like, there are very few businesses, if you start one, that become like institutions, to use your word earlier. Like, there are only so many,
like
IBMs.
Skype's gone, man. Skype's gone.
I mean,
if that doesn't prove it to you, right?
RIP.
Yeah.
So, not that you have to think about all that stuff right in the beginning, but it might be something to consider. And I mean, that's all I got. I guess that is the Lifestyle Design 2.0 conversation. And that's what we're living. We didn't necessarily upgrade it with our mind-blowing concepts, but through the discussion, I feel like if there is a 2.0 of what it looks like as opposed to what it looked like in 2007, I think we hopefully did a good job of highlighting some of those big differences and what they might mean to you, the listener.
Yeah, I think the other way, to your point of lifestyle costing, that hasn't changed, because when you said costing, I actually didn't go the financial route first. I went and thought, what's it going to cost someone if they decide to go and try a different lifestyle, right? And let's just use the most basic example. If you're in a regular 9 to 5, you have a house, this and that, and you say, I want to travel indefinitely. What's it going to cost you? There is a financial cost. You're right. I went kind of the other way of, well, what else is it going to cost you? You're going to miss people's weddings and birthdays and things like that when you're away. You're going to, there's going to inevitably be some things that are hard about this lifestyle, just as there would be if you stayed home too. So that's okay. But there are costs there that are not just financial costs. And I think the thing that's the same, not only do you have to figure out your financial things through Tim's calculators or whichever ones you want to use, but in order to actually live a lifestyle by design, you have to this is never going to change. You have to make the conscious effort that it's worth it for you to do. Figure out what the things are that you want. Then
you have to design it.
Yeah. And then make the hard decisions, sometimes hard. Even if they're fun, they can be hard. I remember when I left my teaching job, I was super ready to leave, but it was still hard because I was leaving people behind. I was doing something that no one I knew was doing. So I was excited and I did it, but it still could be hard. And so you're always going to have to still make the decision on your own to say, as you said, I'm going to design my lifestyle a different way than it is currently going. And the beauty of today in 2025 is that there are a lot more resources. There are a lot more people doing it. I feel like it's easier to find those people who are doing it and get into that group and use that. Like, I guess that would be the way that I would end this, is use those resources that are here in 2025 at your disposal to make the decision to design your lifestyle easier. Lean on other people. Ask them where you should go first. Ask them how you can ask your boss to work remote. Ask them what they did to quit their job. Ask them how they're making money. Use this momentum that this movement has and these other people who are in it to help benefit you, to make the transition easier than it was in 2007, where a lot of us, Jay, were grabbing at straws because we didn't know anyone else who was doing it. And we just were like really piecemealing and figuring it out. And so if you want to do it, it's all right there in front of you, and reach out and lean on those people who have done it, stand on their shoulders and go for it, because there is no, in my mind, better thing that you can do with your life than take control of it and design it the way that you want it to be.
There you go. Lifestyle Design 2.0, what it means in this day and age. Thanks, Trav. Don't forget Camp Indie, INDIE.com to check out the events. And can I drop a promo code? I think you gave me one.
Yeah.
Is
Drop
okay?
a promo code.
Zero to travel. Zero to travel. I think I remember it. Zero to travel, all one word, smushed together. No numbers, and a whopping $600 off a ticket, which is insane. So at least go out and check it out and see what they have coming up. It's just a couple hours from New York City, so pretty easy to get to. Lovely place, and there's an awesome diner, or not a diner, but like a deli type thing in that town. I remember we had this most delicious like bagels and pastries and whatever.
Well, you love the cinnamon bun.
Yeah, the cinnamon bun. Yeah, what was that place called again?
I don't remember the name of it, but I mean, this is in a town
of Milford, Connecticut.
Kent, Connecticut.
Kent, Connecticut. That's right.
Kent, Connecticut. Yeah, it's the one cafe in town.
Yeah,
and if you walk in and there's a big display case of pastries, get, in Jason's words, the orgasmic cinnamon bun.
Did I say that? Okay.
You said, yeah, that's what you said.
That sounds about right.
I'll try to ship some to Norway this year since you won't be able to come. But yeah, if you guys are coming to Camp Indie, the whole genesis of Camp Indie is for people who want to design their lifestyle, right? It's around lifestyle design, and you'll have 150 to 200 other people designing their own version of their best ideal lifestyle, and you'll be able to learn from them, connect with them, become friends with them, play with them, eat orgasmic cinnamon buns with them. It really is a true treat to run an event like that. And Jay, I just want to thank you for helping me get it off the ground, for us jointly getting off the ground. We started in 2018, started planning it in 2018, and here we are 7 years later, running our fourth one. Would never have happened without you, man. So appreciate you, and appreciate anyone who comes from the Zero to Travel community. Of course, you're welcome with open arms, because if you're listening to Jay's podcast, you're one of us for sure.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, man. Always a pleasure. We should do it more often. Hit me up with some more topics. Why don't you guys hit us up for topics if you want to hear anything specific? We'd love to get on the mics with each other. Thanks again, Trav.
See ya.
Cheers. There you have it. Thank you so much to Travis Sherry for stopping by the show. I guess we'll have to wait another 15 or 20 years until we do a Lifestyle Design 3.0 show. What will that sound like? We'll be like, let's talk about lifestyle design. Anyway, I want to share a quick voicemail I got. Yes, I have a voicemail box that you can easily access. It's in all of the show notes, the link. I would love to get more of them. I'd love to hear from you. This is a community-powered show, after all. And if you just click the leave me a voicemail link in the show notes, then you can easily do that. And it goes right to my inbox, and I respond to all of them. So go ahead and feel free to leave a voicemail. I want to get more of these so I can share them on the show. And that's exactly what I'm doing right now with this one I got from Bonnie, who shares a great travel tip. And I'll share a little bit of my own feedback on how she came across this tip afterwards. But here it is. It's just 1 minute. Give a listen.
Hi, Jason. This is Bonnie. I'm one of your loyal listeners for numerous years now. I'm spending about 6 weeks here in Portugal. And while on a boat trip in the Douro River, we met some young college kids who told us about a hack of getting more things on a plane that has weight restrictions. And they said they would go to a duty-free shop, buy something very small, and get a duty-free bag. And they say the airlines just never check these bags for their weight or what's in them. So if you bring a duty-free bag, you can stuff a bunch of stuff in that, and then the other bag is what counts for weight. I haven't exactly tried it yet, but maybe somebody can give it a try and test it out. Anyways, hello from Portugal and have a great day. Bye.
Thank you, Bonnie. What an awesome community we have here. And I love that she heard that tip from other travelers. It wasn't Google or AI or anything like that. Just the old-fashioned way. And I find every time I don't know if it's just me. I don't know if you do this, but when I'm out traveling or maybe I'm camping or doing something like that, and I'm always looking around at other people and trying to get little tips or ideas. And I see, oh, I never thought about packing that way, or I never thought about doing that with my tent, or using this thing to start a fire, or, well, now I sound like an arsonist. I mean, a campfire, guys, come on. You know, just like little things that you catch on, you're just like, oh, that's smart. That's a good idea. I'm going to incorporate that. And those are still where I think some of the best little tweaks, let's call them, you do to your packing, or, you know, some of the practical side of travel. That's where I get some of my best ones. So anyway, other travelers, always such a great resource. And that's you too. I mentioned right before I shared this clip, I would love to source more of these and play them like this on the show. So if you have travel tips you want to share that you think would be helpful for the community, send them my way. Leave them in a voicemail, and I can put them on future shows. And don't forget, lastly, we have a newsletter over at zerototravel.com/newsletter. I don't know if it's, you know, weekly updates, some musings, some helpful links, some fun travel lists and things like that. And it's free to sign up. So sign up over there. I'm going to let you go now with a quote from Daniel Day-Lewis, the actor, who said, at some point in your life, if you're lucky, you get to design the way in which things evolve. I'll leave you with one more from Oprah Winfrey, who said, the whole point of being alive is to evolve into the complete person you were intended to be. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time. Peace and love to you and yours. Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by zerototravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams a reality.